Welcome to the podcast. Today my guest is Niklas Heinecker. He's one of the most accomplished poker players. In 2013, he won more than $10 million playing live and online poker. We haven't seen him play poker since 2015. He's a very smart and thoughtful person, so I'm very excited to talk to him about his poker career, how he spends his time nowadays. And thank you very much for taking the time, Niklas.
Well, thank you very much for the kind words, and no worries. I'm very much looking forward to talking to you too.
I want to start the podcast by reading you 5 statements about yourself, and you can tell me if they're right or wrong.
Yeah, I like that. Okay.
Let's go. Number 1, you will never see me play professional poker again.
Right.
Number 2, I enjoy writing. In the future, I will write a book about my life or my travels.
Hopefully correct.
Okay.
I feel like I have a lot of things to write about. And I do like writing. I just think I'm a shit writer. So I would love to be at a level where I'm comfortable putting my stories onto paper at one point. And I think it would be, for myself, like a very, very good process in looking back at my life. So yeah, I hope that's a true statement. I will be working towards the level, put it that way.
Number 3, from time to time, I log into the PokerStars software to see who still battles it out.
No, totally wrong. Absolutely no.
The friends I made from poker are still my closest friends.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Number 5, quitting poker and finding something new I'm passionate about was far more difficult than I expected.
Yes, correct.
Okay, so that was the 5 statements. We get more in depth now.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So the first question I have for you is like, in 2013, you were the poker player who won the most amount of money. 2014 was you were winning 7 figures. And I don't know what happened in Macau, but when I was in Macau, people were still talking about you. So why did you stop?
In Macau stays in Macau.
So why did you stop playing poker?
So that was obviously a very, very big decision in my life. And the true answer is there's not this one thing which made me take such a big decision. All in all, it was at a time in my life where I didn't want to continue playing poker forever. And I knew for a long time that I want to quit at one point. As a matter of fact, I did temporarily decide to stop playing 2 times before already. And then I returned, which I'm very happy about, of course, from looking back at it right now. So I always knew I'm going to get out of poker at one point. Some things which helped me in that decision at this time was the way I felt I changed. I trained my brain as a result of playing poker so extensively at this point in time. And as well, I realized that I trained myself towards making money more than training my brain and my character towards achieving other things in life. And that led to a certain focus, which I didn't regard as a kind of like a beautiful character trait. So I felt like it's not doing my self-development any good, continuing to play poker and focusing on making money and putting this at such a high priority. So this is not just about the way your mind, your brain thinks about mathematical decisions, but as well about how you think about your life. You think in the terms of expected value. a lot of time. How do you want to spend your life, and how do you spend your free time? And everything kind of gets maximized, or at least in my case, I felt there was a strong incentive to maximize the profit I'm making over many other things which were important in life. And I felt like in poker, there is kind of this strong incentive to, you could say hustle, or this strong incentive to get other people to play you, for example, to play with you, which then leads to me not acting the same way that I would act, I guess, in a different environment. So I always wanted to live my life very honestly and very kindly, and I felt like the poker environment, and I didn't even realize it so much when I was younger, I felt like this was kind of rewarding different kinds of character traits, you know. So this was a big aspect as well. Next, I kind of accomplished quite a lot within the poker environment, and I felt as well that at this point in my life there was the desire to experience other aspects of life and to go to new challenges. And I always wanted to be more engaged with people in general, because poker is a very isolating profession. And sure, you can meet very interesting people along the way, and I made great friends along the way, but ultimately you're playing for yourself. And I always wanted to be involved in an environment where there are more win-win situations, and in which you can cooperate with people and produce something in some shape or form for society or the greater good. And I felt like I wanted to channel my energy and my abilities into something else. And I was 30 years old too, and this is kind of like a cool age to stop, you know. So
was it also, I heard some poker players, because you have to deal with the swings, the huge swings, that you kind of suppress your emotions.
Yeah, some people would argue I didn't have to deal with as many swings as other people did, because I was very fortunate throughout my career. I had a very tough swing in downswing in the middle of 2013, which in comparison, of course, was not as bad as many people had, the downswings that many people had to face. But still, I felt my body, you know, being very affected. I felt a lot of, I would guess, stress or adrenaline in general about playing poker. It led to me basically at times sleeping with a laptop next to my bed, keeping the sounds of full tilt on, and you know, you are never really relaxing, because as I said, you're always trying to maximize your EV, and you're always saying, oh yeah, if I sleep with a laptop next to me, I'm basically almost like working while I sleep, and this kind of justifications. And it just led to my body not being able to relax as much in general. So yeah, there was stress involved, but I think a stress as well, which was very much desirable to a large extent, because I think I'm a personality type that needs some sort of stimulation to feel fully engaged. So I have the tendency to be fairly easily bored with things, and I need a lot of change around me in my life all the time. So that was actually quite desirable, you know, like poker was a gateway, so to speak, to experience flow states and excitement. So this is good and bad, you know, and on the upside, it was very engaging. I could fully dive into this world and forget like almost all other aspects of my life around it at times. And the downside, of course, is that it takes its toll on the body and the way your brain functions as well, because eventually you have to disconnect from this kind of stimuli, and this is very hard if you're exposed to this for like almost 10 years in my case.
So I did some research, and I found your first post on the Pokerstrategy forum.
Nice. When was that? 2005, probably.
It was the end of December 2005.
Okay.
And
interesting. Please read it to me. I'm interested.
And it was a thread where new members of the forum can introduce themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And you wrote "Moin," that's like the Northern German way for saying hello. Niklas Heinecker. I'm from Marburg, and I study business math from Hamburg, and I study business math in Marburg. And you were very happy to see that a lot of other business students were active in the forum.
Okay, interesting. Yeah. I remember that time, of course. I started my poker, I don't want to call it career, more my poker path by just being a typical fish, and I lost 835 euros throughout my first year or so of playing poker, or maybe a year and a half. And eventually I decided I cannot keep on cashing money in, and just grind away on my savings. So then I followed a friend's advice to go into a Pokerstrategy forum. In the beginning, I was very reluctant, but I was promised $5, I think it was, back in the day, if I sign up and if I pass the test. So that did it for me. And then actually I realized fairly quickly that there was quite a bit of value to be gained by studying and it through that medium at this time.
How did you start playing poker?
So during my school days, I was always a gamer. I was a huge computer nerd. In my heart, I still am. I just don't allow myself to play as much in a way. But I love games, video games.
What games did you play?
I was a big fan of StarCraft Brood War. I played a lot of Brood War between the age of maybe 14 and 18, I guess. Like my daily routine was coming home, eating frozen pizza, playing a few hours of Brood War, eating a lot of chocolate and drinking a lot of Coca-Cola through my daily grind. I really enjoyed it. That was a big passion of my life. But I played many games. Man, I played so many games. I was just loving video games, So you name it. I started playing video games when I was 7 years old, 8 years old, on an old Atari. So yeah, but back to topic. So then in school days, I discovered this German card game, Skat. I'm sure you are aware of it. So it's like a 3-player card game in which one of the players has to play against the other two, and he gains a certain advantage to balance things out. And it was a really interesting game to me at this point in time. And I kind of made a little bit of money against my good friends over it, but all of us kind of loved it. So then I even played these stupid machines and like these small restaurants where you put 40 cents in. Dude, man, I played it. I played it. I liked the idea of playing roulette. I was just too young to do so. So I was kind of like a gambler and a fan of all kinds of games. So two of my good friends introduced me to the idea of playing poker back in the day. So I started playing poker and I was like, oh, damn, this is a lot of fun. And then, of course, I fell into the fish trap of thinking I got a great strategy very early on. And that was good. It was good fun, I just chipped away on my savings back in the day, slowly but surely.
So when I saw your post on Pokerstrategy, first I was very surprised that you, in total, you have 1,500 posts in the Pokerstrategy forum.
No way.
Yes, you have.
I have 1,500 posts in the Pokerstrategy forum.
And then I looked more into it.
Yeah.
And I was even more surprised because you did probably 80% of the posts in like the first 1.5 years.
Wow. I was that active? Oh, wow. That's possible. Yeah. Well, if you say so, I guess it is. And now I'm slowly remembering. I was very active. Yeah, for a while I loved it. Actually, yeah. Now it comes back to me. Like I started out as being a huge poker fanboy. So the first few years I was just reading all these poker books, Ace on the River was my favorite with all these
Larry Greenstein.
Yeah, exactly. And I read Phil Gordon's little green book and little yellow book and blue book and the Sklansky books and the Harrington books and just read all the poker books. And I was a huge fan of all these poker pros, So I was just trying to consume as much about poker as I could. I even remembered I was close to painting like a spade and with all these pokers like diamond and stuff like this into my room, because I was like, wow, poker's the greatest thing. And when I was visiting my hometown in Hamburg, I went straight to the casino because they had like this poker casino. It was just, I didn't do anything but thinking about poker in the first few years. And this was the time when I was very active in Pokerstrategy forum as well. And I guess it kind of shifted a little bit into the 2+2 forum. But for the first few years, I really enjoyed talking poker and posting a lot as well.
So my next question is, how did you work on your game?
So these were the wild days, right? There was not.
So for the younger listeners, when Niklas was playing, I'm pretty sure there was no Pio solver and all the software out there where you could put it in and you had like a fixed answer, or it was more easy to find like good strategies.
Totally different. And the way that nobody really knew who was a good player and who wasn't, like everybody was just doing crazy shit all the time. So people were just trying all sorts of stuff, and they had very varying strategies at this time. It was very interesting to see. And you never really knew what was working and what wasn't. So you kind of looked at the results, but it was way more guessing game and way more intuitive. So I look at it as a phase of poker which was way more creative. It was way more, in a way, listening to your intuition and being a bit of an artist in the way you are playing. And then over time, yes, for once, eventually these solvers and these mathematical tools came into being, but it was more evidence as well around about which players were good and what worked and what didn't. In the beginning, it was just like people clicking buttons left and right. Nobody knew anything, So that was, in a way, it was amazing. Nobody was doing any work really, so you didn't feel as much pressure of doing work. So you did a little bit of work and you were already like way ahead of the herd, so to speak.
Yeah, when I was looking through your posts, you did a lot of like hand analysis and analyzing hands of other people.
Yeah.
And now looking back 10 years ago, people were saying, yeah, that's like standard play, great, stack off here. Like nowadays, it would be like, oh my God, it's like a terrible played hand.
Right. Absolutely. The way that you had no idea about profound game theory back in the day, your guidelines how to construct a strategy were just like very raw and basic and kind of stupid, underdeveloped, of course. Absolutely.
So your poker career was at least about 10 years. Is there a time that's like most vivid to you still?
Well, yeah, like my approach changed over the years. I think in the beginning I was just kind of like playing. I was very intuitive. I brought in my analytical side and math as well, but I think I was always a very intuitive player. And then at one point, I think most characteristically maybe was the time when this totally shifted and when I kind of didn't trust my intuition anymore and totally replaced it, not totally, but very heavily replaced it with more logical, rational, analytical thinking. I think this was in, I would say, 2012, 13. And I don't necessarily think I would not do it again to the same degree, even because I think I had a very strong intuition, which I was never really that aware of. I think the most defining time of my poker career was probably in late 2010, very early 2011, in which I made, I think, a huge skill jump. I remember I was just so exposed to poker. I was just so deeply into it. It was this for a few months in late 2010. I probably just slept 5 or 6 hours per night. And during the day, I was probably spending 15 hours playing poker, thinking about poker, talking about poker. This was the time when I kind of emerged in, came known on Pokerstars. I had an account on Pokerstars since 2005, I guess, or 6. But I was always afraid kind of to go on Pokerstars. For some reason, I felt, oh, the Americans, this is like the real stage. People are just better there than on the European sites. And I was a bit scared of going there, you know, of getting, I guess, my ego crushed or something like that, because I was doing fairly well on all these other sites. And then I arrived on Pokerstars, and then, well, my background on Pokerstars was I was just this fishy guy in 2005 or 6, donking around on 25-50 for a while, just, you know, winning like 30 grand and losing 15 grand back, and then kind of like being a little bit worried I might lose more money, and then I just kind of left Pokerstars. So I came back in like 2010 and I played against Nano Noko, who thought, I don't know if you remember Nano Noko, but he apparently thought I must be a fish, given there was the site, right, Poker Table Ratings, that everybody used, where you can see like this, the performance of your opponents, the past performances, and he must have thought, oh, this guy's obviously a fish or whatever. And then I guess he lost so much money that he didn't want to adopt his view in the session, so he just kept on playing, right? And I don't know how much did I win, like a lot of money in the session, sometimes something like, I think like $200,000 in one session, something like that.
Playing 25-50.
Playing 25-50, right? So I had this boom, you know, it's like my first day on Pokerstars, kind of having like this amazing start, right? And then I guess the pros, a lot of pros were seeing this match or heard about it or so. And then afterwards, I felt like I'm fairly quickly established myself, so to speak, on that poker side. And this was when I was really, I guess, getting the facing the competition from my perspective.
Who were the top guys back in 2010?
Good question. I don't remember as much. I was always a huge fan of Kanu 7. Still am. I think Sauce, Kanu 7
was for Haley, Katja. They were around already.
No, they came a little bit later, if I remember correctly. These were not the guys that I was most focused on back in the day. Oh yeah, then Ben, I think, was already well established. But I'm not doing everybody justice here, you know, it's a long time ago. So I don't totally, I'm not exactly sure what happened in late 2010 opposed to a few years later.
So how did you work at your game? Did you just talk to people? Did you use, I think back in the day, we had like Poker Equilab.
Yeah, there was a few tools out there. There was Poker Stove. I did a lot on Poker Stove, which is a really basic program, right? So I think the way I worked on my game, I talked a lot about it. I always, I think, had this approach of being very open. I in general in life, I don't mind sharing my ideas. And I think in poker, some people were protective about sharing. They felt like they are losing their edge. And I think that's a stupid idea. You know, I think if you have an idea, usually expose yourself with your ideas, get them field tested, get feedback on them. And if you really come up, if you're like the father of an idea, you will usually be ahead in the execution of this idea as well. You have more experience with it, and you have more conversations about it, right? You understand it longer and more intuitively. So I always felt like putting my ideas out there and getting ideas from other people back and talking openly about strategy, that was always something which helped me a lot in my progression as a poker player. And then I think I was fairly open to trying things out and having new ideas and playing these ideas through. So I think this is kind of like where you have to make the shift at one point from being a student to becoming a master or so, is you are willing to understand things more fundamentally, and you take a certain confidence from that to now apply these principles into new areas which have not been explored yet. So then you become creative, and then you just start thinking about it more abstractly. You know, for example, in the beginning, you were mentioning these stack offs, you know, oh, standard stack off, because you're following basic rules of thumb and you're not really confident enough in your abilities to say no, you know, I don't want to do that. You're more willing to stack off because it's standard, even though you really think deep down it's a bad idea, than doing what you feel like it's a great idea and being humiliated or criticized for it, or criticizing yourself too much over it. You know, there's the fear of being wrong all the time, so you rather stick with what everybody's doing. And at one point you realize, you're pretty good at this, you know, and you are getting more confidence in just straying away from the path that everybody else is taking. And then you have to put these ideas into like a mathematical framework, and you have to translate it. You have like a certain idea, so you think you have the intuition, there's something to be gained. For example, you have the idea, people don't overbet enough, you know, people are not, why do people never make like this little min bets or so when they are out of position, instead of always checking, you know, or making a big bet? Why are the bet sizes the way they are? Do you think less in terms of the structures you already see, but you break it down more fundamental, and you think which would be the most profitable thing you could possibly do? And maybe this is something very different from what people are doing. And then you, as I say, then you have to construct a whole translation, a whole approach out of this, and you're field testing it and you're discussing it with other people, and you see if they actually have good arguments against it, or if the arguments are just kind of like canned, you know, and phony, and come down to like, but nobody's doing it, you know, or but how would you know, or like just, you know, not real arguments, just kind of like excuses why they themselves have not been doing it so far.
And now looking back, if you look at the solvers are betting making a lot of small bets out of position, over betting. And what do you think, like in 2013, you were the guy who won the most playing online poker?
I think
correct.
So. Yeah. I think you're referring to this high stakes DB no limit hold'em cash game ranking back in the day. Yeah.
Yes.
I think in 2013 I ranked number 1. Yeah.
Why do you think your edge was so big, and how was the level of play back in the day? Like what were you exploiting? What were people doing wrong?
Well, I think there was not this one thing that I did better than other players. I think I had a couple of good ideas that I was able to translate into strategies already that some people were lacking behind with. But I don't think in heads up I was good in playing heads up, but I feel like my real strength was in playing six max, something which I feel the more logical players, the more mathematical players had more difficulties with, because it's harder to translate sound ideas into strategies. When it comes to six max, there are more variables at play, and I feel like, I guess I was a sweet spot. I guess I was fairly good in the mathematical side of things and in the analytical side of things, but as well in the more intuitive and creative side of things. So I think a lot of world-class players had more difficulties bringing their brains to six max because they were not trusting their intuition as much. And I think I had the sweet spot where I was pretty good in both. So I was having an edge over the mathematical players in terms of my intuition, and the edge over the intuitive players in terms of my mathematical understanding and translation of fundamental ideas and fundamental truth about game theory into actual play and practice.
Looking back, who were one of your toughest opponents?
Well, there were many, right? So funnily enough, I did not think of Ryder as being such a force until he himself kind of put the super confident statement out there about doing ranking of the best heads-up players in the world. At this time, I still played him on 2550 with a lot of matches on 2550, and I didn't even put that much. I didn't even give him that much respect. I put that much attention to the matches.
You're talking about duck poke?
WCG Ryder.
Yeah.
So he emerged as one of the, probably I didn't do him justice, and I did. So, you know, when you ask me who was one of the toughest opponents, probably he was. I just didn't realize it as much back in the day. I gave the most respect to Kanu, and I always had the Kanu 7, and I always had, I think, almost this, I think it worked against me because in poker there are a lot of underlying psychological aspects, especially heads-up situations. So you need the right amount of confidence, so to speak. While I might have been slightly overconfident against WCG Ryder, I was probably not confident enough against Kanu. So whenever he would do something that I didn't understand, I would automatically assume he knew something I didn't knew, right? And that's very dangerous too, because you're always kind of playing an intellectual catch-up game with your opponent, and you're always a little bit of a step behind, and you're not as confident in trying new things out, right? So I know that, for example, my good friend Dennis Wilhasha, he had an easier time against playing somebody like Kanu, and Wilhasha is used to have a very brave, very, I guess, exploitative and aggressive and creative style, right? So just putting stuff out there and throwing stuff at your opponent can be super effective, but you need the heart or the confidence to do it. And I think I always lacked it a little bit in my matches I had against Kanu back in the day. But I always respected him a lot because when we spoke, he always had a very good understanding of the game theoretical aspects, which I admired, and he had a very logical approach to the game. And well, I respected Sauce, but not as much as I respected Kanu. Who else were there? There were the Germans. They were really good. Seneca and Hit and Run Me, Please. No, what was the name of it? Anyway, like they were good, but I felt like I was a little bit better. Ben 86 was always a tough match, but I was just running really good against Ben, and I felt maybe as a result of that I was slightly better than him as well in heads-up situations.
Was OTB Red Baron already playing?
No, he was not playing. He like when I was on my way out, he was on his way in pretty much. So about the Russians, I respected the Russians, but they were 6-max players, right? So they didn't play heads up, and I respected and still do Wilhasha for his game. But that's almost like a clash of game ideologies, because Wilhasha had this really wild style, and I was kind of, even though I had an intuitive side to it, I was then more identifying myself with this mathematical, analytical approach, which is why I admired Kanu so much for his way of reasoning and the construction of his personal playing style. But against Wilhasha was always very tough. There were like matches where I felt in control, but most of the time you feel out of control, and it can feel emotional. You get into emotional matches, while a lot of times I felt like when I was playing players which were good but not one of the very best, I felt like, okay, I just got it, like they tried to play my game, I'm just a little bit better than them, and this was not very challenging, or I felt more confident about this. But with Wilhasha, it's like I have no idea if I'm really ahead or if I'm actually behind in this match.
Was it because Wilhasha brought you in so many spots that were unusual, so you had to always make stuff up?
Totally. Like other people, like the math crowd, which were almost all of us back in the day, it almost felt like as long as something is not proven that it works, you just don't do it. So they were very restricted in the way they were playing, and turned out they were wrong about a lot of stuff, right? So they just didn't implement a lot of cool creative things into their game back in the day because they lacked the confidence or the intellectual framework to do so. But Wilhasha was just kind of like, we were just doing crazy stuff all the time. He would be over betting or like doing really weird betting patterns, or coming over the top in crazy ways. And you just, if you play such an opponent, it just makes you think so much more about, I really want to do this very thin value bet here, or is just going to backfire? So you're burning a lot of your intellectual mental fuel on trying to foresee what the opponent is going to do, and it gets emotional. If you make a bet which might have been a little bit too loose, and then you're getting raised on this one, it feels really bad. So yeah, it's more challenging.
And one question to find out if you're really not following any poker anymore. Do you know who Linus Love is?
No.
Okay. He's probably number one.
Yeah. No, I even in the later stage of my poker career, I tried to disconnect from any kind of involvement in the poker world. I thought it was very distracting. And yeah, after I quit poker, I was so happy that I didn't have anything to do with all this noise anymore.
Okay. And my last poker question for you, and I hope you can give me at least a short answer, because you said what stays in Macau, what happens in Macau stays in Macau. So I heard, so you went to Macau in 2013?
I think March 2013, I went there first.
And in 2013, there were also like big games on Full Tilt with Malaysia. Mm-hmm. How was Macau back then? Like, how big were the games?
So Macau was a very, I assume it still is. Oh, I don't even know what's happening in Macau if the big games move, I think, right? Anyway, so Macau was a very political place. I mean, there were obviously some good games, but it was all about if you're allowed to play or if you're not allowed to play. So especially and this is true for a lot of live poker, but especially for Macau. So when you have an online poker background, you have to really understand this, right? And it makes sense too, that people want to play with certain people and don't want to play with certain people, and that is totally legit. But when you're coming from like an online poker background, you kind of think everybody's allowed to sit at any table because that's what you're used to. But then you come to live poker and it's like, no, we have a private game and you're not invited, and then there's like this frustration of the poker nerd, a stereotype of like, oh, but I'm so good, I deserve to. No, just because you're a good player, you don't deserve shit, right? So when I came to Macau, I had a good friend in town, and I made friends with some of the pros there. And the people who were deciding who could play in the games or not, they were very friendly to me as well. And I got along with them very well. So they let me play in some of the games. Now this was very, I played when I came to Macau the first time. I might have played maybe in three or four times in the big games. It's not like you're playing there and grinding it out over weeks or months. This is not the case. I was playing, I think, 3 or 4 times, and I was running very well. And this is this is what it takes, to be talked about. Or so you go into a game, you have like a super good night, you just hit 3 draws more than you do on a shitty night, and then people are like, oh wow, this guy's really good or whatever. So yeah, I had a very good landing in Macau in March 2013.
Okay, but talks are exaggerated. So you played a few sessions in Macau, but you didn't grind it out for a long time.
No, exactly. Yeah. So I returned to Macau, I think, one more time in late 2013, but I don't think I actually won money there, or not a lot when I returned. So it really came down to, there were 2 games, right? There was like this, what I'm calling like a more political environment of the very high stakes games. And then there was still a fairly high stakes game at the Wynn in Macau. And this was a public game. And I played, this was more like the grinding environment. And what was cool about Macau back in the day, at least, is the people who played there, the pros who moved over to Macau, they were just really cool people. They were just really nice environment to play poker. It was not as loud and kind of aggressive and hustly vibe as it was in Vegas. It was just a little bit more friendly. And there was like the Starbucks store right next to the poker room. So you can have your, it was just nicer. The environment was calmer. There was more fun at the table. There was more laughter. and I guess it was a bit easier to make money in these games as well than in the counterparty games in Vegas. So this obviously helped for the pros to be a little bit more relaxed. So it was just more pleasant to play there.
So since 2015, I think there are no hands recorded from you from online poker. And one question I have is, for example, I stopped playing pretty much 1.5 years ago, and it's quite hard to quit poker. And there's like kind of I talked about it with some friends. There's kind of like a post-poker depression sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard an interview from like a former Olympian yesterday, and he was like, he thinks up to 80% of Olympians get like depressed after the Olympics because they work so hard, and then it's like over. It like kind of goes to zero. So how was quitting poker for you?
Pretty rough, but it's always hard to say why do you feel this way or that way. I cannot really tell you the answer why it was the years after poker were tough. It might very well be related to all the adrenaline and the thrill and the excitement of playing poker. It might have been more of a lack of purpose that I felt afterwards as well, which is correlated but not exactly the same, right? So yeah, I stopped poker and I was like, oh wow, okay, like I'm this smart guy, I have all these resources, these abilities, now I'm gonna do something super cool in the business world. And then I build up this kind of like this expectation, this pressure on me, like I was great at poker, now I gotta be great at the next big thing, and this is not big enough for me, and this is boring, And then I just looked into many things, and I think as well you have to, it's tough about if you're a little bit in the spotlight about, I guess, anything in life. If you're very successful in anything in life, your ego has the drive to take on this identity, and that is working very much against you because what actually I think was the biggest driver in my poker career was a certain self-doubt or humility about how good I was. And I think you need this in anything in life to become good at it. You have to stay a scholar and you have to keep on learning. So when you build up this kind of pressure on you, when you tell the story, you got to be great at the next thing, but obviously how could I be great in anything else but poker, because I didn't do anything else in life. So then you have this expectations, which then in turn unconsciously kind of push you into passivity about things, because you don't really want to go there and just suck and be told that you are stupid and that you suck in anything, right? So that I had to kind of face, and then I think I kind of had to work a lot about realizing who I am and detaching from the poker personality and from my background as a poker player and just being a very regular person again, and easing into that. And then from that new sense of identity, I guess humility or so, you can start approaching new things and learning new things. That is one thing. On the other hand, on the pure drive level, other things are just not as exciting as playing poker for shitloads of money all around the world, right? I mean, it's pretty hard to find something like that. So I think you kind of have to detach. You kind of have to go on a detox from all this adrenaline and all the thrill. And this takes a while. I think my brain was just used to doing kind of extreme experiences, even when and for me, gaming in general was always like very rewarding, very engaging. But I could like drink a lot of alcohol and go partying, a lot of stuff. This was kind of like cool too. But when I was sitting at home reading a book, I was like, oh my God, I just couldn't read a book, right? It's just so boring. You have to get back to that state. And I think a lot of this just has to do with time as well, because probably your biochemistry changed in a specific way, and you just have to rewire your brain and reestablish a new baseline for what exciting things are and for feeling things again, which are subtle.
And you made a bet or a promise to your parents that you won't play poker for 1 year at least?
Yeah, this was when I stopped in Christmas 2014. I just didn't want to be in the space, but that that I saw a lot of people went to, and that I myself went through once or twice myself, that you say, okay, you want to stop poker, but then it's boring, and then you just, out of not having anything else to do in life, you just click a little bit on Poker Stars, and this is like enough excitement so you can stay in this state of passivity for way longer and not really do anything. So I guess I had this inner wisdom that at least I'm feeling the void and feeling the pain to be driven enough to try things out in life and to not stay at home in my apartment, but go out and try things. And the things I tried, they didn't materialize into any profession, but I made great experiences, and I tried things out, which I'm thankful for nowadays.
So what are you most passionate about nowadays? How do you spend your time?
Oh, most passionate about. Well, I still really enjoy traveling. I guess most passionate I'm about spirituality and psychology these days. It's just something that is very interesting to me. And I have this background that I was just talking to you about this identity thing. Like, okay, now I'm back in the real world. Who am I? Why do I feel this? Why I'm not doing that? All these questions come up, at least in my example, and I just wonder who I truly am and why I do what I do and why I'm bored about that and why I'm driven to do this. And I did Vipassana meditation 16 months ago, and this was a very profound thing for me to do, because back then I was involved with cryptocurrency investments, and I was just in the process of writing, like, I guess, a little paper or a commentary to a friend of mine about a specific new token which was about to be released. And while I was sitting, and it was kind of stressing me out, and I was sitting in Vipassana, and I had all these questions coming up, and one of my questions to myself was like, why do I do this? This was really not fun. Like, why do I spend my time with like these abstract matters and doing stuff like that? And a lot of motivation I found in my life was I just wanted to be great at things, I just wanted to be respected for things. I wanted to be regarded as intelligent and this and that, a lot of things that I wanted to be perceived as being good at. And it's like, and this of course is a driver in becoming a great poker player as well, right? Like, I was not playing poker so much just because it was fun, but I just couldn't stand losing against anyone, right? So where is this coming from, this desire to materialize or to establish yourself as being better than other people in anything? So there was like all these deep questions coming up to me during my meditative phase. And when I was coming out, I just made a lot of kind of changes to how I spent my time. And in regards to making money, being successful, just being successful, I guess, in general. And it started a lot of growth, I want to call it, right? Let's give it a positive spin. I think it just channeled my thinking and my being into exploring myself more and discovering a lot of spiritual ideas and psychological facts about myself. So yeah, I'm still doing this a lot. I'm doing psychotherapy, I'm doing all kinds of workshops and retreats, and I'm just very interested to understanding the nature of life and myself better.
And I did a Vipassana also a few weeks ago, I think a month ago.
Yeah, you told me. So do you resonate, as the spirituals say, do you resonate with any of the things I just said about my experience? I mean, I had a lot of breakthroughs, I think, during my Vipassana, but what was, coming up for you?
For me, it was very helpful. So maybe just to explain, if somebody doesn't know what Vipassana is, there are different types. I think you did a little bit different, but with my Vipassana, it's a 10-day meditation retreat. I would say it's a 10-day meditation boot camp. So you go there, you're not allowed to talk to people for the first 9 days. You give away your phone, you don't have a book. So you just with yourself, you meditate 10 hours a day. You have time to eat. You maybe have 1 or 2 hours which you can spend walking around in the trees. And I did it because I wanted. One of the reasons was I wanted to know how I feel if there's no information coming to me, because I spent a lot of time on the phone getting distracted. But the funny thing is, it didn't even, I felt good, but I would have thought I felt much more different just from the that I got isolated. What was very helpful for me, I feel, is like I'm way more content and happy what I'm doing in the moment. Before, I had a lot of times when for example, I went swimming. I was okay, I would like to work now. And when I was working, okay, I would like to go swimming. So always wished I would be at another place. And I think it reframes I think that's what therapy does. That's what happens if you take mushrooms or ayahuasca. It just reframes a lot of situations and in your life. And I felt with meditation, it's kind of like, if you take mushrooms, it's like kind of taking the spaceship or taking the race car. And with meditation, you really have to work for it. So I could really appreciate, and I think it was way more easy to implement what I learned at Vipassana. So my plan is definitely to do it again.
Yeah, I think this is what almost everybody does, right? When we are coming out of Vipassana and we want to go back in, which in a way is crazy because it's just so hard to do, right? Like for me, it was so hard to do. It was the toughest days, the toughest 2 weeks of my life. I went for 16 days in the north of Thailand in a Buddhist monastery, and it was horrible. But at the same time, on some level, it's just super beautiful too. So I'm coming out and I'm almost sad that I'm out, you know? It's like really strange. And I sat in front of a window in my hotel looking down on the city of Chiang Mai. And I was just sitting there for like 2 hours and like, woo, this is already so exciting and so much stimulation, you know, and all the people here and there. It just felt so peaceful. So you want to preserve the state, of course, right? So there's something so profoundly beautiful in it.
Well, it's more of a joke, but my take on meditation is just so boring that then everything else you just appreciate. Oh, there's a leaf in the wind. Ooh.
Yeah, I think there's truth in it, right? Like, it's a little bit like re-establishing a certain baseline in your brain. Because what we are doing in our everyday lives, or I don't want to speak for you, but this is kind of what I heard you saying earlier, is we kind of micromanage our emotions all the time. Why do we stretch ourselves? Why do we scratch our hair? Why do we drink the coffee now? Why do we go to the phone now? All these super impulsive movements all the time to kind of do what the body wants us to do all the time. And this just establishes, and when we're doing this unconsciously, we're just getting into the patterns of doing more and more and more and more things, you know, smoking, whatever, drinking, just everything to feel good enough about ourselves in the next moment, or feeling pleasure in the next moment. And it just leads to like this state where we just like compulsively do all these different things, and nothing you do is ever good enough, you know. And you always think, what could I do to feel better? What could I do to feel better? And Vipassana kind of gives you this space to be like, you don't do shit about feeling better. You just, even if something is itching, you're not even scratching it, you know, just deal with it. Just deal with it with things being as they are and being good enough. And I think you're right. I think we are establishing a new baseline for what is okay. And we realize even that is okay. Even just sitting there, not doing anything to make our experience actively being better is already fine. So if you can, and you think about, right, if I can just have a few coffees a day and talk to 2 friends a day, wow, amazing. Bliss. Life couldn't be better. So,
and what I really like about the meditation is it's kind of a tool for everyday life. So I would say I'm definitely more of the if there are different personality types, I'm more of like the anxious type. So for example, when I had to do the podcast, I was like, oh, I hope, like I was worrying about, hopefully it's going good. And meditation teaches you to kind of step back and just observe what's going on. And at Vipassana, at least the Vipassana I did, they tell you, okay, you should to really keep it going, you should meditate 2 hours a day. I'm doing like a half an hour in the morning at the moment. And I can feel I'm just way more relaxed, and like anxiety and like all the stuff that happens to you during the day, it doesn't like it doesn't take my full attention. I just can look at it and handle it from a more relaxed state.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel there's always almost this misconception. Like if we're really scared about doing something, we usually, it's accompanied with this thought about how bad it is if this would happen, or how likely it is that this will happen. And this is usually, it's not true, right? Things are not that likely to go wrong. And if things go wrong, it's usually not that bad either. And I think as these thoughts are misleading, our kind of feeling we have to get a new coffee now or so, this is all suggesting us something which is not true. Nothing really happens if we are not doing this or not doing that, right? So just like the exposure to not micromanage anything anymore and just seeing life goes on, I just wasted 10 days of my life just sitting around, not having any output. Nothing happens. Okay, you got a bit of too many emails in your, what do you call it? The
inbox.
In the inbox, exactly. You have too many emails in the inbox. Fine, takes you 2 hours. Actually, that's it, and you're rid of all the emails again. Nothing's gonna go wrong. It's just this anxiety inside of us, and the right way of coping with the anxiety is kind of facing the anxiety and realizing it's a bit of an illusion. It's a bit of a ghost or a demon. And if we are just facing it, we take its power away slowly. At least this is what I feel like.
And what we tell you a lot in Vipassanas, it doesn't matter if it's good or bad. Everything is like coming and going. So you shouldn't get attached. Okay, you can't feel happy all the time. And if you feel bad, it's most likely going away at some point. So are you going to do another Vipassana?
Yeah. I wanted to do one later this year, but I'm not sure if it works because I feel like it's got so popular. I want to do the same you're doing, by the way, the SM Gönker one. I feel it's getting so popular that it gets really hard to get a space in one of the more popular camps.
What I heard, once they open the registration, so you have to register 3 or 4 months earlier. It's kind of booked out the first minute it's online, and then usually now two times as many people want to come as they have space.
Right. So I'm on a waiting list for another one in Germany, but I'm not sure when I will actually go and do my second one. But I will definitely go back, yeah.
So how do you spend your days nowadays? Because you're kind of retired at 30. It doesn't make the biggest difference, at least money-wise, you're well off. It doesn't make the biggest difference. You don't have to go out and work. So how do you spend your days?
So I always had this drive in life for creating something or for changing in any way. It's questionable where this drive is coming from, but I still have it with me. So I'm not somebody who is relaxing a lot in the classical sense. I usually pick up new projects, and I rather have the tendency to stack my day with too many different I guess, appointments or meetings and gatherings than too little. Right now, I am getting up around 7:30 in the morning. I have a Skype conversation with a very good friend of mine, Court, the Courtster on PokerStars back in the day. And we are discussing a real estate project. We are basically having this one-on-one group of educating ourselves in regards to real estate investing. And this goes on for 2 hours. It's really nice. It gives me structure and gives me an early start into the day. I usually work out with, either hit the gym or I do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I picked up boxing and I do some yoga. So I usually work out around once a day as well. Then I have a Spanish class 4 days a week around midday. And then I have different kinds of, I guess, hobbies like psychotherapy. I consider a hobby almost, you know. I have a therapist that I really like speaking to about life. I do quite a few workshops. I do a technique called EMDR, which is really interesting. It's about, basically, it's against certain trauma that you experience in your life or certain memories that you're holding on to, which are not serving you. And the technique is something where they move a finger very rapidly in front of your eyes. And the reason for that is that basically your eyes are connected to the different parts of your brain, and your brain has to get deactivated all the time. And in this way, you're actually kind of changing your memory. I don't know how it technically works. It was recommended to me and I'm doing this right now. So it seems to work. It's really interesting, unintuitive.
So you do a lot of work just on yourself, getting to know you better.
Yeah, a lot of this. I guess various kinds of what you might say, self-improvement, but I don't like the idea of, you know, the terminology very much anymore. I don't think there's really a self to be approved upon, but I do a lot of things which interest me and which I feel like help me in growing in the direction I want to grow at, without really making an objective value statement about it. It's just what I like to do, you know, what interests me more than what I think people in general should be doing. You know, this is not the take on life I have anymore.
Okay, and one question. I usually wouldn't ask the question, but I think I'm pretty sure you put a lot of thought in it. So I'm going to ask you a very broad question.
Okay, sure.
What is life about?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. After thinking about that for a very long time, I'm not sure. I think it is an absolutely key part. I don't know if it's the purpose of life, but I think accepting life and in accepting who you are as part of life as absolutely fundamental. So accept what is and where you are right now and come to peace with it, because who you are right now and how you observe the reality, the way your brain functions and everything, that is just all you have. This is the whole experience. And it's pretty cool, right? So make peace with that, I think. And that peace gives space for appreciation and takes away fuel for the mind to obsess and to criticize and to judge. If you stop judging yourself, you stop judging the world, or the other way around. Same, fundamentally, I think. And then life just becomes more pleasurable.
Okay.
If this is a purpose, I don't know. Some people think it's about, we are basically God and our journey is to wake up again. And that's the whole fun of things. But I don't know. And I don't think we can know. I think you're free to attach a meaning to it if you want it, any way you want it. It's your life.
I'll take it as I like the answer. I'll take it as an answer. So Niklas, we are coming close to an end.
I'm gonna hit you with 10 more quick questions.
Oh, wow. 10. Okay, let's see.
But it's like
we're good on time. No worries.
Time, and you can answer the questions with one word if you want to.
Cool. Let's go.
Okay. It's 18-year-old Niklas. You're not allowed to play poker. What would you do?
Well, I would do exactly the same thing I did because I did not play poker when I was 18.
Yeah, but you're not allowed to play poker in the future. So even with that.
Okay. Well, I think I would kind of go with the flow. You know, I would probably do the same thing again. I would start studying something, but I would just have trust in life that I do something else whenever I feel the calling to do it. I don't think it's a good way of being too stuck in your ways.
Would you study business math again?
Possibly. I think I would study philosophy nowadays.
Okay. Second, your biggest strength?
Listening and non-judging.
My guilty pleasure?
Many. No further comment.
Name one.
You know, I got to be politically correct and say I drink too much coffee.
Okay. I have one more coffee question. So.
Oh yeah, sure. I love coffee. So.
You can take one book to a remote island.
I get back to that. Let my subconscious work on this one, and then I pick it up.
Okay. Number 5, coffee question. I know you like to drink a lot of coffee. Favorite coffee brand?
I don't have it. I love Colombian beans that are raised on very high altitude. This is something I really enjoy, like the red fruity note, very fruity coffee. That's what I love.
Okay. Do you drink it pure with milk, sugar?
No. I drink it pure. I like cold brew coffee as well, by the way. It's really, really nice. Has less acidity, so it's good.
Okay. Number 6. Most beautiful favorite travel spot or spot in the world?
Koh Phangan in Thailand.
One thing I stay away from?
Gossiping. And victimhood.
Number 8. If you could change with one person for one day, who would it be?
And I have to take one of these enlightened. Actually, I would go back into the 60s and I would swap places with Alan Watts.
Okay. As a former poker player, how can someone get you tilted?
Arrogance. If somebody's if somebody tries to attack somebody I love or myself and try to being really mean, you know, just really destructive traits. Yeah. And arrogant, you know, yeah, I fucking hate that.
Okay. Number 10. One thing people don't know about me?
Well, many things, I guess, no? Let's see. Man, that's hard to answer these things quickly. One thing people don't know about me. Man, you have to cut some of the silence out here.
We have time.
Okay, I'm almost never eating carbohydrates. I'm always on a diet. You know, I love dieting.
Are you doing like paleo?
I do a ketogenic diet, but I just, you know, I don't really care for eating. You know, I'm like, my best friend always jokes that I I just eat for the macros. You know, I love self-experimenting with food, and I don't really care a lot about the taste. For me, it's really cool what you can do with your body.
Okay, so you eat a lot of broccoli?
Yeah, broccoli is pretty dope.
Okay, so back to the book question. One book you can take to a remote island.
Okay, I would take a Franz Kafka book. I love Kafka, and I don't really care. I think America by Franz Kafka. I just take this one, just to space out my mind.
Okay, that were all my questions, Niklas. So it's one more time. It's on you. If you want to say something to the listeners, some last words.
I did not prepare anything. I mean, thank you for interviewing me. It's been a long time since I've been interviewed or since I take up anybody asking me for that. I mean, there haven't been many requests, let's face it, right? But no, it's interesting, you know. It's I actually thought about, I don't know if I told you, I thought about doing very basic podcast myself without any structure, just me with one of my friends that I'm hanging out with anyway and just talking smack, you know, and just whatever comes up. So I actually I have this one realization about myself that I want to go more into a self-expressive way, more about being creative in the sense of just creating anything and sharing it. And this process of developing the confidence or calmness about exposing yourself, putting yourself out there, I think that's a very important thing in life. You know, it's self-acceptance. You know, put yourself out there as you are and be in peace with who you are. So in that sense, it comes to a very nice point in time that you asked me to do this interview, you know, because I actually enjoy it. I think it's part of my journey. It's just sharing more of who I am and my ideas and where I'm at in my life with other people.
Ben, thank you very much for the podcast. I definitely enjoyed it.
Cool.
If you would do a podcast, you have one listener, at least.
If I would, what do you say? If I had one,
if you do your podcast, I would be listening.
Okay, nice. Yeah. Look, I'm just looking for I'm just wondering, are there 5 people in the world who actually want to listen to this kind of stuff that I'm just talking to people about anyway? And if yes, it's that's cool, man. You know, 2-3 people. You know, that's all I ask for. That would be cool.
I think it would be more. And thank you very much for taking the time. Thank you very much for listening. And hear you soon. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.